faith stories.
My now wife Chelsea was like, "Hey, you're coming to church with me on Sunday," and I was like, "All right, I've been looking at the Bible. Let's do this."
Fishing memories.
When I first started, I was just fish, focus on the fish. And I see the kid catch a fish, I'm like, good job, perfect, awesome. And then he goes up there and I'm like, we're catching slot snook. And this kid's up here going, oh, the breeze. I'm like, this is exactly what it's about.
Meaningful conversations.
You have to stay in the Word. You have to have a good support system. You have to know what the end goal is. You have to know who God is.
Positivity. This is the Faith and Fishing Podcast. Your hosts, Cam Steele.
If your identity is you're an angler, whenever you're not doing well in the water, that's whenever you can't be content.
And Robert Randolph.
And his timing is perfect. We might not always agree with it, and we might not always understand it at the moment.
Bring you interviews with some amazing guests from the fishing community and discuss all things to do with fishing and their faith. Welcome to the faith.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam and I am back, baby.
And I'm Robert.
Robert, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. So the weather's getting nice. The only thing I can complain, but not complain, but I'm going to complain anyway a little bit, but I love it, is we have baseball and softball every night, but it has been oh so nice here the past 2 or 3 days. It hit 80 today, and the daggone lake is calling my name, but we've got, after work, I'm going straight to the ball field because like this week we have games every day. So I wouldn't trade watching my kids for anything, but man, I got to ride across Sharon Harris every day to and from work. And so it's just calling my name, but I hadn't, I fished a couple of times. I don't even know if I did a recap last week. I may have just went into Jody, but, are we going to do recap now, or should I just say, how are you doing? And
Go for it, man.
Okay. So, our tournament, our first local tournament got canceled because of the weather. And this was it just this past Saturday?
It was.
Okay. Yes. So if you go back, I actually talk about how I was going to catch them the next for the tournament, because, man, I was up in the junk, and dude, I cast about 10 times. I sent you some pictures that day or the next day, and I cast about 10 times. I caught a close to a 19 and then right at an 18 on about 10 casts in about 10 minutes. And I put the rod back up and didn't fish anymore where I was at. But I had some located. I felt like I was going to do pretty good. And, of course, old Mother Nature crept in there, and the weatherman forecasted 20 to 30 mile an hour gusts and inch of rain for the whole day. It didn't quite turn out that way, but, shout out to Mitch, our tournament director, looking out for everybody and making the right call, even though it was painful when I got that notification that it was canceled. I was like, oh, no, like, I don't care. It could have been a damn hurricane. I was going to that. I was going to go and I was going to catch those fish. And actually, it still ended up going Saturday, which made me feel a little bit better, because when I went, the fish weren't there. So I was like, okay, if they would have had it, they still would have already been moved. But I did relocate them, so I know where they're at now. But, so now they've rescheduled that whole thing to even like Cape Fear River instead of Sharon Harris, which is fine with me because Sharon Harris in November is not my strong suit, and I wasn't looking forward to that. So Cape Fear I can probably do okay on. I can scrape together some fish on the river, but so that about sums it up. Caught a couple pond fish, but they're moving up. I mean, if you want to fish shallow, now's the time, because Sharon Harris, I'll just tell you, they're 2 to 4 foot of water, and you hit those grass clumps, and it's going to be for the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's going to be pretty on fire. What about you? What are you gotten into?
Well, so not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, I got out and I was like, I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm not going to be able to make it all the way to Harris for pre-fishing. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to get comfortable in the new kayak. Got a couple, surprise, surprise, on a square bill. Throwing my comfort zone, but getting more and more comfortable on the new yak, and went out. I did not get to go out Saturday. That was the day that I felt I would have gotten on them, but no, I ended up going out Sunday, and I was so frustrated with social media, the bass angling culture on social media and in our trail, that I was like, I'm going to go carp fishing. And man, Sunday, the wind was so bad. The water was so rough. There were times where on my downstroke on the paddle, if I didn't time it just right, my downstroke didn't touch water.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
pretty windy Sunday.
It was crazy. It was hitting that lake just right. The spot I wanted to fish was 3/4 of a mile into the wind from the ramp. And I was like, I got out there and I started going, I was like, this isn't happening. Like, I looked down at my fish finder. I'm going 0.2 miles an hour. I was like, nah, I'm not going to do this.
That's why you need a motor. Get that motor and you'll be going faster.
It wasn't safe for me to be out there, whether I had a motor or not, man.
I'm just messing.
If I had a motor, I would have pushed it too far and I'd have ended up doing something stupid. But I was like, I'm going to try this bridge over here and get into this creek a little bit out of the wind. So whenever I turned, the wind kept wanting to push my back end. So I was paddling on one side, going 3.5 miles an hour. And got to the point where I dropped my anchor pole, and I was still not out of the wind enough. I threw out a few boilies and just watched the weather get worse and worse and worse. I was like, I need to get back to the ramp. And whenever the wind gusted, I looked down at my fish finder and I was paddling and going 0 miles an hour. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So not safe to be out there. I only lasted
not a fun day.
Yeah, I only lasted like total on the water time. I think I lasted 1.5 hours and probably 45 minutes to an hour of that was paddling. So it was
Did you catch any carp?
No, not at all. I think had I had given it some extra time, I would have. But it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
I was sitting there. I was cold, wind blown, and I was watching the water get more dangerous. And I was like, nah, I'm calling it early. So
I hear you.
And then next weekend I'm on call. So yay.
Yeah.
So fun stuff.
You're not going to the Burlington Bash this weekend?
No, not going to the Burlington Bash.
I would go fish it, but we're doing it's youth weekend, merge weekend. So we're having a bunch of youth at our church and we're doing a bunch of stuff. I'm filming some stuff for them. So I'll be at church Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm signed up for that Angler of the Year race. So I'm just going to use that as a drop and just see. It'll be like last year though. My youngest son's basketball schedule just came out, and there's a lot of weekends that I'm doubled up with the tournament and his basketball. So I'll go watch his basketball and just wait another couple years so I can actually fish all the tournaments. And
I hear you.
It's good though.
Yeah, just a couple quick announcements. Or I guess one quick announcement is the live show April 17th to celebrate the 4th birthday of the podcast. So make sure y'all are tuning in. That's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern. A little late for us Eastern guys, but whenever you got a toddler that you're putting to bed, you do it whenever you can, and we'll catch the West Coast guys. But hopefully some of you East Coast guys can jump on and interact with us. We're going to have some fun guests, hopefully do some giveaways, all that good stuff. So I will also say, this episode's guest is another kayak angler, And we have a lot of kayak anglers on the show. We're not a kayak fishing podcast per se, but Robert and I, we are kayak anglers, and our circle of people is kayak anglers. So the people that we have gotten to know, we've developed relationships with, we've all that good stuff, we've connected with. Most of them are kayak anglers, and that's why so many are kayak anglers here. If you're somebody that I really am not interested in the kayak thing, and y'all have too many kayaks, too many kayak anglers on, like, I hear you. Let me know who to get. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, email, whatever, and we will reach out however we can to get somebody on if you have somebody in mind that you want to hear from. So just wanted to throw that out there. Just wanted to let y'all know that it's not that we're we don't want to have anybody else on the podcast. That's just the easiest people for us to get to, and the people that we have gotten connected with and want to share their stories with you. So wanted to throw that out there. Let's go ahead and let's thank Get Outdoors real quick, and then we will jump into the guest this week.
Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle is one of the largest canoe, kayak, and cycling retailers in the Southeast, with a huge selection of kayaks, canoes, bikes, and all the accessories needed to experience paddling and cycling comfortably and safely. Get Outdoors helps to expand and educate the paddling community through their free demos held on local lakes in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and through in-store clinics and on the water courses and demos, and will even get your new boat rigged up for kayak fishing for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or visit them online at shopgetoutdoors.com to be wowed by their selection.
All right, so this week's episode's guest is none other than Casen Wallace. So he's coming back on the show. He was one of the guys who came on for Jackson Orr's charity tournament whenever we had the winners on. What was that? Was that the 2022, or was that that was the 2022 when I believe we had the winners on, and he got to come on and talk about the charity that he was fishing for and all that good stuff. But now I told him then that we wanted to have him back on and share his story with us, and it hit me last week that I was like, oh man, I have not reached out to him to have him back on, so I need to do that. Casen, welcome back, man.
What's up, man?
So go ahead, get us started. Let us know who Casen Wallace is.
Well, you were right. It was the Christmas, I think, right before Christmas of 2022, coming in the new year of 2023. At that time, I was 25. Now I'm 27. We're about to turn 27 here in the next couple weeks, or the next week or so. So 27, living in North Alabama. I grew up in South Alabama, actually, just south of Birmingham, probably about 10, 15 minutes outside of Birmingham. And actually didn't start fishing until about 4 or 5 years ago. Completely dabbled in it as a child, with cousins and stuff, but didn't start until like 2020 when COVID hit. Probably that spring of COVID, I fished, some in high school, but really full force when COVID hit because we didn't have much to do.
Yeah, for sure. So was COVID what pushed you towards the kayak?
I bought a canoe, actually. We watched Greg Blanchard on YouTube and, some of the Googans and stuff when we weren't busy or working or something like that. And with a lot of off time with work and having to stay in the house, or ended up going to a buddy's that fishes tournaments as well now. We didn't have a way to other fish other than like a pond or from the bank at a lake. So it was a dream not like a dream, but it was more of a thought, an inspiration watching those people, from a kayak or something else. And I was like, there's no way. And, I could afford probably something from Walmart and look like a goofball. So we went to Academy one day while we were out for COVID, and I saw the canoe, one of those old. It was actually an Old Town, up on the Snark or whatever 116 or something like that. They're like 11.6 or something like that, and got 2 seats in it, and I was like $650, something like that. They had it off, marked down like $102 or something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna get this, and we're gonna put it on top of my Ford Taurus. I'm gonna strap it down somehow. And we got it home. Actually, we stopped at a local pond on the way and threw it in for an hour or so. Didn't catch anything, but it started there. I mean, I had that canoe for probably a year. Fished our local trail the first time out of it for a while, and got a flint probably a year after that, a new canoe flint. Loved it for a while, and I just needed something bigger. So I ended up what I'm in now, an Old Town Sportsman 120.
Okay, absolutely.
That's solid. Yeah, this Greg Blanchard guy, everybody keeps bringing him up. He must be like pretty popular dude or something. I don't know. I might have to. I might have to check him out.
The quality of his videos was really good back then compared to other people making kayak videos.
Yeah,
so.
I'm just messing. I can't. It's one of the first things that pops up on my feed, so I watch them all. I mean, it's just, he's one of the best storytellers there is as far as
and
kayak
that's
fishing.
what I guess
it's,
more
it's,
was
it's
it
cool.
is about.
Yeah. I think all us kayak guys watch him. I mean, he gets, I'm like, oh, a new video is posted, and it's only been posted an hour. Oh, there's already 16,000 views on it.
Yeah,
it's like, it's crazy, man.
Yeah,
but that's the Old Town 120. That's pretty solid platform. So I got to check those out. A couple of people we were staying with at the Bassmaster. They came by our campsite. They were helping another guy with his trolling motor and rewiring some of it, and got to actually go out on your favorite lake, on Lake Crabtree last year. They had an Old Town demo day. It's pretty interesting. The difference, and I've got 2 bona fides, and those Old Towns are definitely will make you think and scratch your head, but it's a different ride than the bona fides. There's some things I like the bona fides better. Some things I like the Old Towns better. So definitely when it's time for a new one, there's going to be some decisions to make.
Yeah, I think I was actually the new Power, the PWR 117. That's one I was looking at before I just upgraded to a motor, but kind of wanted to do that after getting forward-facing sonar last year, and just you got to upgrade to these things to keep competing, sadly. So when I started, like in the canoe days, I was thinking, there's no way I'm gonna own a nicer kayak, and then it was, I'm never gonna own something pedal something, and then I was like, I'm never gonna own a motor guide, none of that. And then just after the years go by, you spend all
sucks
this
you
money.
in.
Yeah. For sure, gotta spend some to make some, I guess.
There you go.
For sure. That's one thing I will say. I love that I am not. I don't feel held back by my need to compete, because I'm like I am so competitive that whenever I compete at something, it takes all the fun out of it for me.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so I don't get too sucked into the competition side of it. And that helps a lot with not feeling like I have to keep up with the Joneses. I do get caught into it a little bit every now and then, but I'm able to curb it a little bit. I was gonna ask if you had gone with forward facing sonar.
Yeah.
Well,
So
you
that's
had some healthy discussion on Facebook about it last week, so I wanted to ask if you had gone that route.
Oh yeah, I've had it for about a year now. But I've been playing with it since it basically came out. Ironically, you said something about kayak anglers. I actually started messing around on a boat first. Well, the canoe, right? But I've got friends that got boats, but I didn't go as often. And as I started kayak fishing tournaments and stuff, I'd hop on their boat a little bit more. And when it first, was affordable, just by your regular citizen and come out. Garmin, they had their live scope, and then Active Target came out. AT1 came out, the first version of it, and it's probably 2 years ago. And I got on the boat with a buddy of mine at Gunnersville here, and I just thought it was so cool to watch a fish chase your bait, even if it didn't, hit it. Growing up, learning to fish in a stream and sight fishing, that was a really big confidence for me. And down south here, we do it almost all year round. I mean, you can sight fish constantly. Sorry. Well, I just kind of got into it more and more, and I was kind of against it at first, but as soon as I owned it for the first time, it's a whole different ball game. It's when you use it on a daily basis or every week or every weekend, it's you can't have, like I said on that post of mine, I said you can't have an opinion respectfully unless you're using it every weekend. It don't matter if it's on your boat, but you have to if you're using it every tournament. There's guys that still fish our local trail that have it this year that I've never seen them plug, or when they go by me, they don't have it on. They're not using it. They're obviously beating the bank or something. There's advantages and disadvantages. Like I was fishing this morning for a little local deal that's coming this morning before I head out for Oklahoma for the Classic. I've been learning for the past year, really trying to focus my game on just forward facing sonar. So, because I know how to fish the bank, like I can go beat blooded or flooded brush all day, right? But and standing timber stuff you can find with 2D side scan stuff like that. But those roamers, they're really gonna win your games these days. They're going to be your kickers, those 1-2 fish that you need that people aren't going to find floating around. And if you can learn how to fish that way and be well-rounded, in my opinion, you're going to be unstoppable as of right now. There's guys, as we see on the elites going on lately, why the big debacle is these older guys are starting to not agree with it as much because I guess the effect of it on everything, the fishing in general, the long run, what's the word for the ecosystem for the fishery. So it's a real big debate. We could go on for hours about it, to be honest.
I think they're more worried about their pocketbooks and their income. That's the truth in me. I've watched a whole lot of takes on it, and I think those guys are worried about not just the tournament income, because a lot of those guys make their money on sponsorships. But let's say you're in a field of 50 and you're in the bottom 15 all the time. Some point those sponsors are going to start jumping to these new guys. If they're out there killing it with forward facing sonar and you're not. Yep. I think those guys are more worried about the long term. They've been able to, let's just say you're a top 20 angler on the elites. They've been able to sit around between 10 and 20 and make, cut a check, a decent check every once in a while, but they're making all this back end money on their sponsors is really where they're making it. But as long as they stay in there and stay somewhat competitive, that's fine. But then you look at the last two elites and you look at how many rookies are in the top 20, it's pushing those guys on back. And so they just are going to have to either learn how to use it or they're going to get beat. That's it, the bottom line. And I'll be 50 years old in 2 weeks. So, that's one thing you see going from flashers. When I was a kid, it was just flashers. And then, man, we thought we were big. When you could see an arc on 2D, man, that was the deal. But and I know you probably can't see this, but I saw somebody's post today, and I'm going to put it up there, maybe. No, you guys can see that.
Yeah.
This is Garmin's new live. It's basically a 3D.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can get
just
it
was talking
place.
to somebody.
Yeah, look at that. That's crazy. And you can turn it. He's turning that with his finger.
Yep. I was just telling
Um,
somebody when they come out with a 360 version of live,
yeah, so
they thought the problem was now.
that's called Garmin Panoptix PS70 live sonar, and
Wow.
I don't even know who posted that, but I sat there and watched that. It's posted on Instagram by Fishing World is the account that it's posted under, but I'm sure that there's more than that. I just ran across it today. I didn't even really know we were going to talk about live sonar, but I was like, that's what I was doing a while ago. I was pulling that up. I was like, because we're about to go down that rabbit hole, not just with what we have going on now, but just looking at that, I'm like, oh man, that's a whole different, like, it's one thing, I can sit there and look at that screen and watch people do it. I don't have forward facing sonar, but I've seen enough of it on the screen, and I've fished beside people who are using it as well. You kind of watch what they're doing, watch their screen, see how they're locating them. And I'm like, okay, I can see where this is going to be helpful. You can see the fish's reaction to your baits. You can roll through some baits and figure out what's working, what's not working. And just this 3D version, I don't even know how that works. I don't even know what the transducers looks like. I don't even know what kind of boat it was on. But that's going to be open up a whole nother can of worms. And it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep, technology is not going to stop.
I think someone said, I think his name was Austin or something like that, said on my post about the effect on wildlife or the effect on fish populations will change, and because the average Joe will figure out how to use it. And I think my comment about saying that you really need to use it on a daily basis to have a full opinion on something like that, especially like fish populations in each fishery. I've been to a lake here locally, here in Coleman in North Alabama, and then gone to like Gunnersville, and the reaction that I get on baits and for like the ping off the transducer, it's all different. Like this more smaller lake that they see it. Everybody around here has it, but they don't see it on a daily basis every hour like
Right.
they do Gunnersville. So that when you throw a bait in the water out in the middle of nowhere there, they immediately turn in 30 foot of water and they're looking up like, what was that? And they run straight to your bait. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to eat it, but go to Garnersville and do the same thing and they run away. We come up, this same guy was saying on the boat when I first started using it, we came up with the term, it's a big old Gunnersville finger, because basically the fish is turning away as soon as you put the bait in its face. So do I agree on that aspect that it's going to affect fisheries? No, but not necessarily. But when you show me stuff like that, like the 3D thing, it really worries me, because it's really hard to learn on 2D and get the concept that you're basically just pointing a flashlight at something underwater and that's what you see. That 3D is a whole different world. Once somebody, like you said, you're in your 50s, somebody above my age and up that wasn't didn't have that had flashers and 2D, and that was video game fishing then, and the next 5-10 years has changed drastically. If someone can figure out that 3D stuff, shallow and deep, I mean, we're on a world of the whole world of fishing is going to change competitively.
I will say this: the fisheries biologists that I've talked to are not concerned. So I'm not concerned. And I will also say this: I've spent 15 years in retail, 5 years in service, and like the service industry, and I think 10 years in, and a lot of these is overlap. 10 years in IT. The average Joe can't figure out how to use a credit card. We're not concerned about the average Joe using forward-facing sonar.
Exactly.
I will say that right now. My take, and this is as a spectator, because I'll go ahead and say I am in no position to afford it anytime soon, and it doesn't make sense for me to have it as anything more than a toy, and I'm not going to be able to use it enough to ever really figure it out. But I will say, as a spectator, it reminds me a lot of the 3-point shot in the NBA. There's all of a sudden this new tool that can be used, and not everybody has quite figured it out yet. But then all of a sudden, Steph Curry comes along, and everybody starts shooting threes because it's the only way to compete with somebody like Steph Curry. Even people that can't shoot threes are shooting threes every possession because that's what they feel like they have to do to win. And I get that it does kind of ruin watching the game. The big thing with forward-facing sonar is that it's just happens so much faster because it's so much more available to everybody than having to learn something completely new, like the 3-point shot. But also, the NBA had like these, they had David Robinson and Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Moses Malone, all these center, like these absolutely elite centers to anchor that position and keep that inside out game going for so long. And we don't really have that in fishing. Like we've got Drew Gregory, Keith Poche, and there might be a handful of other names, John Cox. But for the most part, everybody has gone to forward-facing sonar, and you've got guys like Rick Clunn that say, either learn it or get beat by it. And I can kind of see how that would rub somebody the wrong way. Like if Michael Jordan had come along and said, well, everybody has to buy this sweatband because you can't compete with anybody who has this sweatband unless you have it, then they probably would have said, you can't have that sweatband. But I'm not in favor of banning it at all. But that's just been how I've kind of viewed it, is that it's like the 3-point shot in the NBA just accelerated.
Yeah. That was a big deal when that came out, and a lot of people were against the 3-point shot. But I mean, I think it made basketball better. I think forward-facing sonar makes fishing better. And now that the TV and the broadcast are figuring out to split the screen and show the forward-facing sonar, show the angler, I enjoy watching that because I'm trying to learn and look and see what they're doing, how they're casting, how they're using it to try to figure out, I don't have it yet, but I will have it as soon as I get my money right.
So, Robert, you said something about the Bassmaster event. Did you fish the Lake Murray event a couple weeks ago?
Well, let's see. I went and I rode around Lake Murray for 2 whole days, and I wouldn't call what I did much fishing, but yes, I was at that event, and I did pay
Gotcha.
the entry fee. But so no, let's see. What did I do? I took Thursday off. I actually left my house Thursday morning at like 4 a.m. So I pre-fished Thursday and Friday. That's the first time I ever went to Lake Murray. And I did find a little pattern on Friday, but then on Saturday, I couldn't get anything going. And I'm more of a dirty water fisherman, and for some reason, I was mid lake, and I was in probably a lot too clear water where I should have been. Towards the end of day one, I did probably hook a 5-pounder that got off at the net, but it was really shallow on some wood and some really dirty water.
Yep.
And I didn't find that soon enough. But if I did, I would have went to the other side of the lake where the river was coming down. I was kind of in mid lake in the northern, northern.
Did you
part
fish
of it.
the Dreher Island area or the south
yeah.
end of the lake? Okay.
No, I fished
you were
Dreher
actually
Island.
in the area that it was practically one out of then.
Mhm.
Jake and them were probably not too far from you if you were at Dreher Island or around that area. That was my initial game plan going into that one. So it was kind of ironic that you said something about the Bassmaster event. And we're talking about forward facing sonar. My entire game plan at the Bassmaster, the Murray event, was using forward facing sonar. I had found something. We got there, girlfriend and I and the kids got there probably. We left Tuesday night or Monday night, got there Tuesday morning. I kind of fished Tuesday. I was still kind of had a cold. We got on the water fully Wednesday for a full day. ended up going to the spot I was going to fish day one at, and there's this island. Last time we had talked on this podcast, I had not fished the Bassmaster Gunnersville last year, but I ended up leading the day one with the same idea, but it was a release fish area, so I knew the fish were there anyways. But the islands, when we're in pre-spawn down here in the South Carolina is technically still the South, with all weathers all the same practically right now. So when they were at home, they were practically pulling up on these islands, and that's what they do this time of year. They pull up and then they'll pull off because they're not ready to spawn yet. They're just getting ready to feed. But like that first week of March, I always know here at home they're going to pull up. It doesn't matter the weather, and they're going to be hungry. So I went in that finding island. That first ramp had an island. Went to the island, saw probably the biggest bass I've seen in my life on sonar, and was like, okay, this is what I'm going to roll with. Screw the shallowness, because everybody was running to the docks and running to the bank. So I ended up going with a striper bite with forward facing sonar using the new Berkeley finisher. It's like a little I don't even know. It's almost like a spoon mixed with like a twitch bait, like a jerk bait. You work it like you do a jig and spoon, and it's got the action of a jerk bait. I hooked up with one.
A lot of like a spook that you work in the middle of the water column.
Yes. Yeah, practically. It just kind of like, it's got a glide bait action when it falls. So it flutters kind of, or like shimmies. But it's got that fast reaction. And since working with this, you can either fish two ways with for you can use it as a tool, or you can just fish basically using it by catching roamers and chasing fish. So I was chasing fish at that point, and you can waste hours. You can waste your whole day doing that, not catch nothing, and people 5 feet behind you on the bank are catching 100 inches. And Lake Murray really taught me that a quick way. On day one, people were limiting within an hour or two around me. I mean, Russ Snyder I could see him off in the distance, and he already was in 4th or 5th place. I was like, I got to stop chasing these fish, because every fish I would hook was a stripe. I couldn't get down to the bass quick enough. The stripe would eat it too quick, and the few bass that were around were big. I mean, that I knew that were largemouth were big. They were acting real slow. So I kind of ditched that halfway through day one and ran up to the bank and said, I'm going to use this as a tool and kind of look around. And I kind of got my bite way too late, halfway through probably 1 o'clock at day one. And it was fishing the docks, the boat lifts. I don't know if you knew that, Robert, but the ones the docks that had the boat lifts that would lift the boat out of the water, that had the post that would go all the way to the bottom of the lake. There was a lot of those fish were hanging around those and feeding off base of those. And I kind of picked up that and ended up catching 2 around a dock and couldn't find enough. We had a boat tournament in our area, so
so I went out. We camped at Dreer Island, and I went out of the Dreer Island boat ramp the first day. Second day, I went somewhere totally different because I was already pissed off. So I was just like, I'm not going out there again. But in practice on Friday, that's where I practiced at, was around Dreer Island.
Yeah.
And went out to those main lake points, and I actually was going to the cuts where there are a couple islands at, coming, I guess, south out of Dreer Island, then turning to the left and going up in there where really it's where the elites did really well last year and fishing all those boat docks and stuff. I came around the corner on the day of practice, and it was kind of a blind corner with riprap, and I came around, and as I came around it, there was a boat sitting there fishing the dock and pulled out the biggest bass I've seen in a long time. It was an 11 or 12 pounder. Yeah. And I was like, God. And so I knew there was fish on those docks. I couldn't get them to do anything. And, I had caught some cranking on Friday, so that's kind of what I went with some riprap and some points out there cranking, but just never could find them, and then ended up going back up to Dreer Island, and then there was a couple of bridges where the dirty water was coming through into the clean side, and there were 2 or 3 guys live scoping right there by that marina. and they were just sitting out there in 6 foot of water and just chasing, throwing at them. And so I went and flipping the timber that was close to them, and that's how I ended up hooking that big one. But it got off.
Yeah,
Right at the net.
were they catching fish? Were they?
I think. Well, I never saw them catch one, but they were sitting there long enough that I deduced that they had to have caught some, or they wouldn't have spent that much time there.
So my first day of practice, the day that I had got there and was able to look at some ramps and get in the water, I was Tuesday I could only spend so long. I was still coughing up a lung, and I knew I wouldn't have long, so I probably got 2-3 hours, and I ended up going to Dryer Island. It's a big tip. I don't know if y'all knew this, but release fish, these Bassmaster Kayak Series events and these bigger lakes, bigger events we do, always check the release fish areas, like where Bassmaster like launches out of, the elites launch out of, and because those are where they have the tournaments constantly, and those, especially those bigger Highland reservoirs, that's usually where the biggest fish are. They still hang around, especially those largemouth. They're not going far. They ended up spending their lives there. But I ended up going there and scoping for the whole 2-3 hours. Would throw a jerk bait every now and then, but the ones that would chase and I knew were bass, not stripe, that were alone, they were very big.
Yeah.
They were, that 8-9 pound glass fish. They were very smart too. You could tell the way they interact with the bait, and so it goes into another rabbit hole with it. It's this you can't tell what fish you're throwing at, but
right. Yeah.
If you spend enough time looking at them, not every average man's gonna realize that. So
and that's one thing. I fished around Alex Sterling, which he fishes our local trail, and he was fishing. We didn't know we were going to fish the same area on Saturday, because even though we were camping together, I never told him what ramp I was going out of. I didn't ask him where he was going out of.
Yeah.
I knew we both had found some cranking, and ended up running into him about 9:30 or 10 on that Saturday. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were fishing. He's like, oh, I didn't know you're fishing here. So the wind got so bad that I'm like, hey, I'm going to go this far, and then I'm going to turn around and head back before the wind gets really bad. So we kind of were together because we were on the main lake when it got really bad. And so, I was like, hey, I'm going to hang out. But that's what he was the same as you. Like, he had caught a ton of striper, and he was finding the bass under those striper.
Yeah.
But they were, kind of the same thing. He knew the bass were under him, but he just couldn't.
And the basswood are so slow. The largemouth are not going to move as fast as those stripe. Like today, getting ready for that one coming up this weekend, there's a lot of those stripe, just like at Murray. But they didn't act like the ones in Murray. The ones in Murray, they're real deep, and they're chasing that herring just because it's probably based off that blueback herring. But here at home, I kept on hearing something pop this morning, and look back in the 2 foot of water, there's 3 stripe trying to eat a whole gizzard shad, about the same size as them. So
were there birds diving where all your stripers and stuff were?
Yeah, that was what keyed me into it. Coops here at Gunnersville last year, that's what keyed me in the month before. We were in December, and I'd always heard G-Man joke about at Gunnersville, follow the coots, and it's true. You come to Gunnersville in May, follow the coots, you'll find some green grass, because that's all they spend their life trying to find, that greenest grass. And it's true that those bass hold into it, especially as the year goes on. So, there was a lot of seagulls diving, and I assume there were seagulls, and you'd find 3 or 4 groups of stripe, and then you'd find those largemouth that were just lunking around. And if you could get down to them, the first day of practice that I'd practice out there, girlfriend had ended up running me a spoon because I broke one off on. It had to be a largemouth. I dropped down between some stripe, jigged it twice, got it in front of her face, and when I set the hook, my whole rod bowed over and just snapped 30-pound fluorocarbon like butter. And I was like, and if they're eating big old spoons, I'm getting as many as I can find in South Carolina. But, in South Carolina, they don't have many big old flutter spoons to sell. So,
and folks, there's your Sharon Harris tip for the wintertime fishing. That's what these guys catch them on down here, but not a lot of people talk about that big 5-inch floater spoon. But
yeah,
it's pretty deadly.
That's another thing with forward facing sonar. You're going to see a lot of older baits return. because the way they run, the way they work, and the fish that the depths that they run, and that these fish haven't seen them in forever. So I'm using baits that are from the 80s, 90s, and that's one of the biggest thing right now I like to do is been looking through when I have the time is like yard sales and stuff or baits. These older baits that didn't ever get popular would have probably been like the Credge and the Finisher now. Been real popular for a while, and probably catch giants now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've got gizzard shad, whether you got forward facing sonar or not, throw that flutter spoon, the big flutter
Oh
spoon.
yeah.
Even if you've never seen a big gizzard shad in your lake, if you've got gizzard shad in your lake, you've got big gizzard shad in your lake.
For sure. Yeah. No, yeah. That's I didn't know that there was gizzards there today, but they were nipping at it like it was a thread fin, but this thing was probably a 2-pound gizzard shad, and they were just biting at its back. I ended up hooking one of the stripe, threw a chatterbait in front of it because we can keep them here. Apparently, South Carolina slot. When I was at the Murray event, I was trying to keep them, and I Googled it real quick, and apparently they have a slot limit. So, and apparently a lot of their fish are like right under the slot limit. So, didn't end up getting to take any of those home, but they are fun to fish for. I remember when we went to Hartwell last year, I spent a 1 day of practice just fishing for stripe on the top water because how fun it is.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, let's shift gears and let's move into faith a little bit. So what is your faith story, man? What is it that you believe, and how did you come to believe that?
So I was raised a Southern Baptist. We went to church for a long time when I was a kid, probably 2-3 years. That's a lot, not a long time. 2-3 years when I was a real young kid, and maybe 4 or 5, and we went to a big Baptist church in South Birmingham, and then we moved up here, and we didn't go for a while. My dad was raised in a big religious family, so it wasn't the church that it was the crowd that was at the church. I think he was trying to find a good church for us, and it wasn't the church that he grew up in. So we ended up coming up here, spending not a lot of time in church through my early childhood, or my main childhood. But when I was a preteen, ended up getting into another Baptist church here in North Alabama, and I spent most of my teen years in church almost every Wednesday and every weekend. Robert talking about events, it was the same thing Friday through Sunday almost every weekend. The girl I'm seeing now is actually Catholic and spends a lot of time in going to her church and stuff like that. So it was more as a child and a teen, and then I got away from it for a while. But I've always been a Christian, but had a rough time in my life between 17 and 21. Did drugs for a while and got addicted to pills, and fishing really saved me for a while. Got me back on a track where I wasn't going down a dark path, and God kind of knew that fishing was going to do that. It was always something I did in my spare time, and when you're coming out of something dark like that, you're trying to find something new or trying to find a reason to get out of those dark times. And fish, God kind of like put fishing on my mind and gave me a lot of free time where I could go fishing. So for sure, he saved me after those years, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fishing tends to do well with those with addictive tendencies.
Yes.
It kind of feeds an addiction without it being a detrimental one, at least to anything.
Most of the time.
Yeah. I gave up a pretty expensive addiction for an even more expensive addiction.
Right. It's just the fishing's not normally frowned upon, so
yeah,
we can get
it doesn't kill you.
Yeah, right. We can get away with it a little bit better, but
Yeah,
I was talking
better.
about that at work today. As one of the guys I work with, he's real big into the boats, and he does a lot of boat tournaments, and he he was kind of across the parking lot, and he was like, Robert, he was like, man, it's a nice day. We should be on the water. And then I kind of took him. I was like, I know. I'm having withdrawals. I've got to go fishing. And we were talking about it being an addiction, because it really is. I mean, it does, feed that side of you, or at least for me, it's just, they say the tug is the drug, and it's pretty true. So, and your story is quite similar to a lot of people, as far as, trying to come out of something. You find fishing, and
God got me out of it, and then it was like I had a conversation. I had taken some pain pills one night. I had an accident, just living that lifestyle, and was on crutches and stuff, and just they had given me some nerve pills, just wasn't doing the deal, and pain pills were never my deal. And I remember feeling so bad, and I was like, this isn't normal, and called my mom, got her to take me to the ER, and they were like, you could be allergic to opiates or something like that. And I was like, okay. And I went home, and sitting on the toilet thinking, just having a thought in the middle of the night, and I was like, ask God. I was like, if you get me through this and I can quit this, tonight, if I wake up tomorrow and this is over, and I have a thought, and you can, if I get through this and you help me get through this, I'll never turn back. Like, I'll never take a pill in my life. I'll never do something like this. And after those weeks and that time went by, and I stopped doing the drugs and stopped doing everything. I didn't have much time to I had to replace that time that I was doing all that stuff with something that was healthy for me. And work, as soon as you get off work, you can only work so many hours during the day, and then I've got kids, so at a younger age, I've got to spend more time with them than I don't want to lose that time now. So I had to find something constructive for me to do, and I could possibly do with my kids. And that's when really fishing. And then COVID hit, ironically, a couple months later. So kind of all God put it all together at once and put me in the situation that he knew I needed to be in. Because promise you, if it wasn't for him and fishing, then I probably wouldn't be here today talking to y'all.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I love that fishing is such a common tool in God's repertoire.
For sure.
And he uses it for so many different things, whether it be like to fill the void left from addiction, or whether it be, the therapy for a veteran, that getting out on the water, with like heroes on the water and stuff like that, or whether it just be, feeding that competitive itch that ends up like somebody who they kind of got addicted to the competitiveness of sports in high school and college, and then they get out of it and they don't have any outlet to compete anymore, or whatever. It's just we hear that on this podcast. We hear how God uses fishing a lot, and it's pretty awesome. All right, man. Well, with every guest, we always ask a couple questions, and want to ask those real quick. What fishing story or memory means the most to you?
Oh, I've got a lot to those. The most. I don't know, probably being in the ocean for the first time, saltwater fishing out of the kayak, the Old Town, right after I got the Old Town Sportsman a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. I went and fished in the Gulf out of Navarre and had no clue what I was doing. Got about a mile and a half towards the rectangle of hope, as they call it, and had my little Garmin down scan, was hoping I'd find something, and just pedaling, and I saw something. I stood up and thought it was like a fish, just slowly swimming on the surface. It was real colorful, so got my attention. Next thing I know, I hit a U-turn sat down, hit a U-turn with the knob, and saw something else that didn't look like I wanted to mess with. It was a big old fin, and ended up being a probably 10, 11-foot shark, probably as big as a kayak, and it made me hightail and chased me like a little sissy back to the sandbar, and kept its dorsal fin out of the water just close enough that I could see it every time I turned back. And I guess I can remember that so well and so memorable because I called my buddy Daniel Higgins here and was like, if it was FaceTiming and was like, if I die, y'all know, at least you get to see it. And I was trying to scream and shout, still a mile offshore of the beach, and saying, look, here's the here's the fin. No one believes me now, though. But that was probably one of them for the most. Yeah, for now.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the first time I did any kind of saltwater fishing from the kayak, I went back into some creeks and did not look at the tide chart, and got caught a little bit and was like, I'm not gonna sit here and wait for the tide to come in. So I trudged through the mud to get back to some
Lord
water I could paddle in. So I will say, anytime you're going to be somewhere where there's tide, make sure you know what the tide chart is, and don't get yourself in a muddy situation.
For sure.
Robert, you want to ask the other one?
What is it? What are we talking about when we're on the water? What's your conversations like when you're on the water, when you're fishing with people? What are you usually drumming up a conversation about?
We talking about like a tournament, or are we just talking about fun fishing?
Either one you want to tackle.
Fun fishing. It can be anything. It depends who I'm with. If I'm with, I only really fish with friends now. I don't fish with a lot of people that, people once tournament season rolls around, other competitors in our local clubs like to catch me when I'm in town, and we'll fish together. So we'll talk about life, and our personal lives and stuff like that. But if I'm like on in a tournament and we've got rules and stuff, and we're just shooting it, and it's all kinds of random stuff. Usually I like to ask other people. I have a bad tendency of trying to get information from people. So fishing that Bass Master Series has been, I've had to be tight locked for now. Because I just like to pry information out of people. Some of my biggest wins before any kind of electronics was solely off of information off of other people coming to events and stuff like that. So I like to talk about the fishing a lot, more than anything.
Heck yeah.
What else? The events that are happening, like today, an alligator. We don't have a lot of alligators around here, so the one lake that I seen one from the kayak was today, the first time ever. So thought it was a log. So talk about that, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, well, let's have a little bit of fun. We're going to dive into our "What's Your Favorite" segment that we do with everybody. Self-explanatory. It's we're going to ask you your favorite in a few different categories, and let's get that started.
It's time for What's Your Favorite, powered by Nakwa Adventure Gear. Power that fits in the palm of your hand.
And before we start, what's your favorite? Powered by Nakwa, the best little batteries that you can get a hold of. Oh, thank you, Robert.
No problem.
I just want to apologize to everybody watching YouTube that keeps looking up in that top left corner and being like, why will he not sit still? I put together this new office chair for my wife this past weekend, and something that you may or may not know about me is I do suffer from ADHD, and a spinny chair is not where you want me if you want me to sit still. So I apologize if it has been annoying you. But just wanted to throw that out there. Casen, so we're going to start things off with what's your favorite scripture?
Scripture? I can't remember the verse, the exact Bible, but Jesus wept. It was, the typical John 3:16 for a long time because it holds so meaning. But Jesus wept. I mean, that's a big one now for me. It's the fact that Jesus cried, meaning that he felt for his people. And well, everybody interprets the Bible in their own eyes, but in my interpretation, that Jesus wept means that he cried for his people. And that it means that he was as human as I am, that if he can cry, it means I cry. We all bleed and cry. So
Yeah.
Jesus wept.
Yeah. To be moved so much to the point that you're weeping.
Yes.
Whenever you know that you are going to raise this guy from the dead.
Yes.
But you're still moved by his loved ones and that loss, that you still weep, that humanity. Absolutely. People
crying for his people. So humanity and empathy, it shows a lot of it. So if Jesus can have that, I like to remind myself that when I'm crying that Jesus cried too. So
heck yeah.
Yeah. So what about your favorite Bible story?
Bible story. That's changed over the years. As a kid, we all hear David and Goliath, Samson, story of Samson, but Daniel and the lion's den. Kind of as a kid, always, attracted to me because lions and man surviving in a hole. But as an adult and in a late teen, I really learned the story and how he got there and how Daniel got in the hole with the lions. So probably that one.
Awesome.
Absolutely. All right. So what is your favorite fish to catch?
Favorite fish to catch? Can it be a species? It can be anything.
It can be a species. If there is one particular fish in your backyard pond that you have named and you want to call that one, that can be it too.
That's funny. I wish I had a backyard pond. Jeez. What's my favorite? I like saltwater fishing. That's really my favorite. I can't do it a lot, so I'd say anything saltwater.
Okay.
I bass fish constantly, almost every other day. So I travel the country to do it. So you'd think I'd say bass, but no, saltwater. Any saltwater species, they just fight like they're never going to live again. And from the moment you hook them, and it's just a lot of blast. I mean, majority of saltwater fish you can eat. So
I was getting
favorite fish to catch, but saltwater probably snapper. Anything that fights real hard. Sheep's head, drum.
Okay. Heck yeah.
Yeah. So what about what's your favorite fish to trick into biting? So the favorite kind of chess game to make the fish bite?
A spotted bass, or those deep, largemouth, the ones that are reactive to a finesse bait, something on four-facing sonar. That's just, it's satisfying to work so hard to do that. And when I learned to fish offshore and fish off the bank with 2D only. I didn't have side scan. I had basically a flasher, like you said, and a color graded 2D Garmin. That's all I had. And that's what I learned on in our local lake over the past 4 or 5 years. And then when I was able to get forward and focusing sonar, it was just, I was like, this video game fishing is going to be a whole new level. So yeah, spotted bass for sure, to trick them into it, because you get to watch how they react to the bait. And when they do finally, it's just satisfying. Even if they're 14 inches, they fight like they're 20 inches. So.
Yeah, they do.
Very fun.
All right. So your favorite fish to eat?
Favorite fish to eat? Trout, for sure.
Now, are we talking speckled trout out in the
no, rainbow trout, stuff like that, brown trout, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, see that North Alabama, North Georgia, you got some of a little bit of everything.
My parents live on Smith, and lived on Smith Lake for a couple years, so they live probably 10 minutes from the dam. I can go down there when they stock them and catch them anytime.
Yeah.
How do you
So,
catch trout?
Usually it's just butterfly 'em, or you can fillet them too. I mean, skin on, stuff like that. Put them in tin foil, grill them, stuff like that. I don't ever bread them.
yeah.
Heck yeah.
So what about your favorite snack to eat when you're on the water?
So we're talking about snack, not meal, right?
Snack.
Now you got me curious as to what your favorite meal.
We'll do both. How about that? My favorite meal is like Publix. You can get anything you can get from like Publix. Not the sushi. Don't get the sushi. That's not a good idea. I've done that before. Not a great idea. Even if it's a California roll, not a good idea. That imitation crab don't play well when you're out on the water for 8 hours.
The kayak.
Publix, yeah. Publix, those sandwiches they make. Those pre-made deli sandwiches they make, those are great. And a Gatorade. But like a snack, I don't snack a lot, so I'd say like some chips. I'll bring, like at the Murray event, we bought a box of those bold flavored chips, and girlfriend said, her and her kids aren't about to eat those, so I ate all those, spicy nachos, stuff like that. But probably some chips.
Okay, for sure. All right. So your favorite body of water to fish. Don't need secret spots or GPS coordinates or anything. Just favorite body.
Okay, so do y'all follow KBF?
Yes.
You do.
Not as much as Robert does, but I mean, I don't follow any
You
tournament.
know
do
where they
because
had the
Robert
10
does.
spot at this year?
I don't.
Duck River Reservoir here in Coleman. It's probably 15 minutes from me. It's just where I learned to fish offshore, and I mean, I've got spots that I can run when nobody else is catching them and catch 100 inches. It's just, I know the lake like I've seen it when it's empty. I've seen it when it's full. So I know the bottom of the lake like the back of my hand. So I can follow those fish where they go and throughout the year and catch them anytime I want to. When I came home from the Murray event, I kind of mended my soul with a couple of those fish. So.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Me and Alex did the same thing. He posted a fish the next day. He was like, "Okay, I can still catch them." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I posted one too. I'm like, "Yeah, I had to go to Harris. I had to go to Harris."
So before we get off here, I need to ask you, Robert, what do you think about us having a cut line on the National Trail Series? What do you think about that? We've never really talked about that. I've never heard that conversation.
So
just your opinion.
Yeah. So my opinion, if you're going to have a cut line, I think it would be fine for a 3-day tournament.
Okay.
A 2-day tournament, I mean, you kind of already have the cut line. Let's say there's 258 people that fished. There's 258 people fished at Murray.
Yeah.
All right. So if you weren't in the top 75, a lot of those people went home. I stayed because it's only a 3.5 hour drive for me. And I was like, I'm not going home because I want to. It was the first time I fished the lake that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm like, I'm going to a different ramp. I'm going to see if I can, and then the ramp that I picked, I think everybody that was there sucked on day one and picked this ramp because there was a ton of kayaks there, but nobody was catching fish. And so, so I stayed and fished, but a lot of times, so in 2022, I fished 3 of the Hobies, and 2 of them I went home early because I had other stuff to do. I wasn't even close to the top. The other one at I don't know, the one that's on Louisiana Texas border.
Cato.
No, it wasn't Caddo. It was south of Caddo. It's Toledo Bend. Okay. So Toledo Bend, I did okay. I had some stuff going, so I stayed and fished both days. But I think there's already kind of the cut line where a lot of people go home and they don't fish the second day. So I don't know if it would really hurt them. I don't know if it would hurt them to do that in a 2-day. But kind of when I think of a cut line, I think of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe Friday you go with let's just say 250. Saturday it cuts down to, I'd probably still have that number big.
Yeah.
Maybe it cuts to 150.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to do a third day, maybe the top 50. But I also think it's according to the size of the lake. I think at Lake Murray, that lake was so big, like at the Dreer Island, there was probably maybe 10 people at the ramp. On that Saturday, 10 to 15 people. There wasn't a lot. And I don't know how it looked at other ramps, but I
About
didn't
the
feel
same.
like, I didn't feel like it was a whole lot because, I mean, you take our local tournament next week, or not this Saturday, but next Saturday is on Hyco Lake. It's a smaller lake and there's one ramp. There'll be 60 of us at one ramp.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that I haven't heard that conversation either, and I don't know that I would be for it or against it. I do think there's some value in the KBF setup where they do a separate tournament Saturday, a separate tournament Sunday. I think that's a draw for some people. I think the more skilled anglers would rather see the longer tournaments with more cuts.
Yeah.
With it down, because I think to put together a 2 or 3 days of great, putting five big fish up, it takes a lot more skill than the one day for sure.
Yeah, I just asked because in my opinion, if we ever plan on as a community as like taking this serious and want to like an elite series for our kayaks, even bass or maybe Hobie, making an individual, where you have to qualify to fish these bigger trails, and people travel full time to do this. You got your handful of people that do it fully, but they're not making them off of tournament winnings or anything like that. But you'd have to have some kind of cut line because, in my opinion, when I was there at Murray, or like I left to Hartwell last year, the Hartwell event early, because I just didn't. Well, I caught all 5 fish, but I was so far down the leaderboard, and they were all an inch away. Christine Fisher was right there, and if she ended up staying and catching a limit the next day, and was still like it finished 40th or something like that, nowhere near. And I saw it as if I'm going to be on the water with people like that first day at Hartwell, I was right next to Andy Milton, and he ended up leading the tournament that day. I felt like if I was to go back there and we were both there and I caught, his big fish that could have put him back in, second or third or first, I felt bad because, I didn't catch anything the week before, and that one fish not going to help me at all, but would have helped him, cash a couple more $1,000.
Yeah.
So.
And I think too, I think most people that are in that situation, like if you're fishing the same water as some of the leaders, then if you're going to stay and fish, you're going to go find something else. If you're not in contention, you're not going to go compete with them. And I did that on Santee Cooper.
For sure.
And it was actually the first day of the tournament, but I had pre-fished prior to that and just had not found anything the whole time. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go up as far north as I can go up the river. And when I got to the ramp, there was like 50 or 60 people at that ramp. It was packed. Yeah. And that's where it was won out of, and everybody was going out of that. So I just I stayed at the ramp and I let them go. And then where they went, I just went a different direction because, I mean, I knew all those people, but obviously they pre-fished there. They know where they're going. I went the opposite direction and said, I'm just going to go try to find something this way because I didn't feel like with that many people, I lucked up on where everybody was catching them at, and I didn't want to be right on top of somebody that already was on fish when I wasn't. So I think there's some common sense things that right now I feel like a lot of people do, but as it grows and the money grows, then it's definitely just going to throw a monkey wrench in that. So I think we got 3 more. What's your favorite? So I'm going to throw it back to Cam.
3 more?
Or maybe 2 more. Did you already? Oh, you did body. Oh, it was my turn. Damn, you did body of water. So I'm going to do your favorite lure.
My favorite lure, oh Lord, a jig, a football jig. That's without a doubt what I learned to fish and what I still fish constantly. Confidence bait.
Okay. What kind of trailer are you throwing on that?
Red. Okay, y'all can't be telling
you don't have
everybody.
to. You don't have to tell us. You don't have to shit.
Just a Strike King Rage Crawl. I started that a couple. I was with the Guggen. You know how they flop. You know how they do the whole little pendant. I think that's a real big kicker. Not more or less the jig color. I think it's the kick of the tail and the skirt flailing is what really gets them going. Those fish, it's like a reaction bite.
The live rubber.
Yeah. Like a mop jig. That's what I was using today. That's what I got most of my bites on today.
Nice.
Yeah.
And last but not least, what is your favorite time of year to fish?
Right now, early
Absolutely.
February all the way to the end of May. I really like offshore fishing into summer, but my favorite time is right now because you can catch them offshore. You can catch them, 5 foot of water, so 2 foot of water. So
Nice.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, before we end, I got a couple more questions because we can do that, but it won't take long. So let's go back to saltwater for a second. So let's just say that you're going. What do you target when you go saltwater? And are you still doing that in a kayak, or do you go in a boat sometimes? What's your deal on that?
So ironically, I said that I didn't fish much. I'm more or less probably meant bass fishing and freshwater fishing, but every year as a kid, we would take a vacation down here to Florida, and my uncle would take us to charter fish or fish inshore with somebody. So I kind of always was fishing, but it was with a boat, somebody holding the rod or casting the rod for me. But right now it's out of a kayak. I'm based solely everything out of a kayak right now for the majority, unless I take, someone invites me out every now and then. But saltwater, it's been Navarre. We'll usually go this time of year, beginning of April when trigger season opens. I try to usually fish for some of them. Usually, don't think I'm going to make that this year, so I'm going to wait and probably fish the snapper season opener.
Gotcha.
It's usually just Navarre. I'll fish the Gulf, the parkway some under the bridges and stuff for sheep's head in the back of the bays. But that's covering a lot of water for me, and
So you kind
I
of
like to fish small.
Orange Beach and
Yeah.
that whole Foley and all that.
sure.
Yeah.
Must be
Panama
nice
City,
to be able to-
all those I've
Yeah.
gone out of.
Yeah. I'm originally from Middle Tennessee, so that was the closest saltwater for us. We'd go down. I lived close to Nashville, so we'd go down and go to Panama City Beach, and then I had a buddy. We did a lot of stuff in Orange Beach. We weren't actually fishing then, but it ranked right up there with fishing, I think.
Yeah, no, saltwater is just it's a whole new game. So
yeah, it is. I do, and we're close. We're only a couple hours from, from the Outer Banks and Wilmington and all that here. So,
is that now that is that different fishing than the Gulf or?
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit different because we're about 50 miles. If you go out of Morehead City, we're about 50 miles from the Gulf Stream. So it would be more like kind of going out of Miami for Florida. So you can go out there and you can get on some good wahoo, dolphin.
Well, I meant
you can do that out of Panama City. You can do that in the Gulf too. But if the boats are leaving, most of the time they're going to try to be trolling. And then if the trolling bite's not there, they'll go to some shipwrecks and stuff and then catch some triggers and snapper and stuff like that. They'll bottom fish for a while.
Do you fish in the Atlantic? I mean, now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at the Murray event, we drove over to Charleston, and that's the first time I'd ever seen the Atlantic with my
cool.
eyes. So,
okay.
I was just, the sand's different. It's the water's much colder and year round. It's much different than the Gulf. So, it's the first time seeing it with my eyes, and ever in my life, I was. You see those TV shows and hear about it, but seeing the sand and everything I was pondering and asked my girlfriend. I was like, the fishing's probably much different over here, saltwater fishing, and
it is. And if you ever want to come this way, hit me up and we'll go out there. So we usually go a little bit north of Charleston, where we're probably like 3 hours north, because the closest to us is Wilmington. To get to saltwater, it's only about 2 hours and 20 minutes to Wilmington, something like that. 2 hours. So it's good.
We loved it, man. But going back when we can. Wish they'd have made an event at Hartwell this year. I'm trying to make an excuse just to go up and fish one of those Queen City ones, but
Go up there. That's some good paychecks for Queen City.
yeah, I know they get 100 plus most of the time. It's crazy.
They do. Yep. All right, I'm done. All right, go ahead.
All right. Just wanted to make sure. But yeah, I was gonna say it must be nice to be able to fish for red snapper.
Oh yeah,
here in the
You can fish for red snapper here.
it just won't be as easy.
You just can't keep them.
Not year round like
you're
we
not
can
supposed
here.
to not supposed to target them.
Well, you don't target them. I mean, but they're on the same wrecks everything else is on though. You're gonna catch them. Yeah.
We call them government fish because
they're probably not as abundant, are they? Though.
Well, it's the only thing anybody can catch whenever they go out to a reef. But apparently, there's not enough of it for us to be able to keep them.
Yeah, they're regulated.
Oh, okay. So y'all don't have a season. You just can't keep them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. It's a really good tasting fish too.
Yeah. And the flounder seasons there is a season for flounder, but it's horrible too. And there's flounder everywhere.
It's like 3 days.
Yeah, it's just something.
So that's why I see all these guys from up there catching flounder and snapper like it's nothing, and or not snapper really, just flounder, and it's like it's nothing. Like
oh yeah, there's flounder everywhere, but the season's so short. But now that's North Carolina. You go to South Carolina, you catch all you want.
Yeah.
So
that's wild.
Yes, and that is just I can
a whole nother
for a long time on that. That was just North Carolina has severely mismanaged its inshore and saltwater fisheries compared to like Virginia and South Carolina, and so where the recreational guys are suffering because of it. But yeah, don't want to go too far into that. I'm going to step on some toes, but but yeah. So wanted to give you a chance to shout out anybody you want to say thank you to, sponsors, supporters, all that good stuff. Go for it, man.
Sponsor free, other than girlfriend and parents help along the way.
For sure.
Work basically for everything I got. So no sponsors, nothing like that. God got me here, and my parents and my kids and stuff like that, and hopes and dreams, and that's what's going to keep us going. Probably roll us onto the classic stage next weekend on my birthday weekend. That'd be really cool to be on my birthday. The day of the classic that we're weighing in, the kayak classic would be on my birthday. So that'd be pretty awesome. So that's all I'm hoping. Shout out to that. That's about it.
For sure. That answers what's coming up next. So I'll just I'll let you plug social media, YouTube, any of that good stuff. Tell our listeners how they can follow your adventures.
Just Casen Wallace fishing. It's the same on everything. It's Facebook. I just use my regular Facebook for the fishing stuff now, and my YouTube is just Casen Wallace fishing, and I think Instagram's the same exact thing. And then TikTok, I have a TikTok that I'll post videos to that are edits of my YouTube videos. Got some cool little edits, some drone and stuff. It's NA fishing, so like North Alabama fishing, but just abbreviated NA.
All right. Awesome. Well, Casen, man, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's been a fantastic one. I did not expect it to be kind of a forward-facing sonar conversation, but I think that's the most civil forward-facing sonar conversation I've ever heard. So,
for sure.
with salt water sprinkled in. We didn't even get into if you're using forward facing sonar.
Oh no, we didn't. I was about to say that
because
guys,
these guys
they ain't telling nobody.
These guys out here, like most of these boats, are not using it. They're using
the Gulf. The guys in the Gulf said that they're using it, but it's a big secret.
Yeah, and there's a longer distance. There's a longer distance transducer for the salt. It's not the LVS 34. It's another one. I don't know the name off the top of my head.
Yep, and they're not telling nobody.
Yeah. I knew that was going on too. But a lot of boats here aren't using it, and I try to tell my buddy, I'm like, man, you got to check this out. So
these guide services down here in the Gulf, if we really got in it in the past year.
Yeah. I figured
know
it was
guys
going
that live in Mobile, so
Yeah.
they said these inshore guys have gotten those for those redfish and stuff like that, have gotten using forward facing sonar, and they're just keeping
And
this.
I've seen over time, it's always the bass fishing always drives the technology for all the other segments every time. Yeah.
We're not the only ones using it. Promise.
Yeah. All right, I promise that's the last thing.
Heck yeah. Well, Casen, thank you again so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. So that's our interview with Casen. Robert, normally I would say final thoughts and all that good stuff, but we are almost an hour and a half into it. So let's just go ahead and pray, and let's wrap this thing up.
Roll with it. Go ahead.
God, thank you so much for this podcast and this opportunity to just kind of talk about how you are in and around the sport that we love, and are working in and through the lives of so many different anglers, and giving us the opportunity to let them share their stories about you and how you work through their life. We ask that you meet the listener that is listening to this right now, where they are, give them what they need through this podcast. Thank you so much for that listener, and thank you so much for Casen and what he means to so many, and what he's able to do for you, and what you're able to do through him. God, we ask that you give us all a very safe week, and bring us back for another episode next week. We love you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless.
Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Please consider supporting those that support us. Jade's Jigs lead-free finesse tackle. Use promo code FNF10 at jadesjigs.com for 10% off. Save your outdoors. Stop losing your gear. Use promo code FNFP15 at saveyoutdoors.com for 15% off. Omnia Fishing. Check out Premium, Premium Pro, and their Ambassador program. Use promo code FNF10 for 10% off at omniafishing.com. And if it's your first order, use promo code FNF15 for 15% instead. Mr. B Lure Company. High-quality handmade baits made right here in the U.S. MrBLureCompany.com. Use promo code faithnfishn for 15% off your first purchase. Get outdoors, pedal, and paddle. Check them out at the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or at shopgetoutdoors.com for all your paddling and cycling needs. And Nakwa Adventure Gear, lighting, power, and all the connectors at nakwa.com. Please rate, review, subscribe on whatever app you're listening on. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless.